All right, you guys, this is going to be something a little bit different. So, yesterday I put a war story out, and reading through the comments, after I read through all the comments, like I told you guys before, I might not respond to all the comments, but I read all of them. And I try to interact with you guys as much as I can. I'll answer a comment, I'll skip a couple, I'll answer another one, I'll skip a couple, but I do read them. And when I last night when I was reading through the comments on that war story, and I told you guys when I put that video out, it was technically it wasn't really the type of war story that I've been telling. It wasn't the typical gangbang type of scenario that I usually talk about. It was a situation where I was in a program and I almost ended up drowning in San Francisco Ocean Beach with a couple other youngsters that were in the program with me at that time. Now, the other thing that I didn't mention in that video that I should have mentioned towards the end is that incident was actually in the newspaper. It was a small, tiny article, but nonetheless, it was still in the San Francisco Chronicle back in when it happened. The guy that was on the surfboard was just a surfer out there that ended up swimming in. One of the other guys that got stranded out there with me, he ended up being called a hero out there. And, I didn't mention this either, but the water was so rough out there at the time when we got stuck that one of the Coast Guards because two Coast Guards actually tried to swim out from the shoreline, but the water was so rough that one of them actually had to swim the other one back in. That's how bad the water was. Those riptides you always find them out there at Ocean Beach in San Francisco and up the coast. There's a lot of other beaches all the way up towards Monterey, all the way down towards the Oregon border. There's different beaches in Pebble Beach, Pismo. There's well, don't take my word for it. Pismo Beach might not be right there. I just remember Pismo Beach is the name of a beach, but there's beaches all up and down the coast right there. A lot of them, they'll have postings that will tell you, after a certain time, don't go in the water. It's not recommended because you have those riptides or those rough surfs all up and down the coast. But anyways, as I was reading through the comments, it amazed me how many of you actually knew about Walden House, Delancey Street, and a couple of you even mentioned Napa. You didn't mention the name of the program, but it was called Our Family. And as far as I know, that program is no longer operating. I think it closed down years ago, but it was actually on the hospital grounds. And if those of you that mentioned that you did the Napa drug treatment program, if it was Our Family, you guys remember that program was a crazy program. The whole purpose of doing this video right here is just talk about it a little bit with you guys. And, some of you mentioned that you had been to Walden House, Delancey Street. So, there's a few things that I want to say about these programs. I kind of mentioned it. I touched on it last night when I did that war story video, but there's a few things that I just want to touch on. So, as I was saying in my video last night, and I think addiction is something that a lot of us want to talk about, a lot of us need to talk about, but we don't talk about it. And, sometimes it's good to talk about it because it might give you that push to get clean, or you might hear other ideas, on how to do it. Because a lot of us, we don't know how. We get trapped in that addiction. And, it could be as easy as somebody that's been through it, just explaining how to go about, going through the withdrawals. What's the best way to do it? What kind of things that they use to make that experience a little bit more bearable or a little bit more comfortable? Because going through those withdrawals is rough. Heroin withdrawals, methadone, any kind of pills, those are the worst kind of withdrawals to go through. And that's why me, myself, personally, I never like pills. No matter what it is, Klonopins, Darvons, codeines, whatever. My mom was a chronic, she used to take all kind of pills. She loved pills. Unfortunately, bless her soul, but she struggled with her addiction her entire life. And if it wasn't heroin, it was pills. It wasn't pills, it was methadone. That's how she lived her life. I've talked about her before and the type of lifestyle that she lived, and it's no way to live. People that live that kind of life, me, myself, I think the thing that kind of helped me kind of break the monotony or get out of that cycle somewhat is that I was always in trouble. I was always going to prison. She stayed out there almost her entire life. I mean, when she was younger, she was a three-time loser. She went to the joint back in, I want to say, the 70s and the 80s. She went to CIW, Chowchilla. She was a Chowchilla gorilla. And, she went through all that, but she stayed out there for, I want to say, the last 30 years. She stayed out there and like she lived like a recluse, she stayed in her apartment and she lived like a hermit. Her apartment it wasn't filthy, but she used to order a lot of stuff online and she wouldn't even use it. It would just be piled up in her house. Her apartment was literally just full of all kind of new stuff, pots, pans, blankets, all kind of crazy stuff. You could go through there and find anything. But, it was the way she lived. Her house, her apartment wasn't, you could barely move around in there. That's how clustered it was. She was lightweight hoarding, you know what I mean? And I used to go over there and I used to tell her all the time, what are you doing? Why are you living like this? You're going to end up falling asleep. And because she used to smoke a lot, she used to smoke. She was a chain smoker. But her day consisted of waking up in the morning, having to fix to get well because she was always sick. She was on like a 30-year run. And, her day consisted of waiting around for my stepfather to show up. He had the dope. That's what he used to do. He used to sling dope. And they had a weird relationship. I'm not going to get into that part of it. He lived somewhere else, but he would come and spend like from 10 o'clock in the morning up until around 6 o'clock in the evening. He'd spend the day with her. And they just kick back, get loaded. He'd bag up his shit. They'd be on the computer doing their thing. Just that's the life that she was living. And she was content with that. I wasn't, but I never really spoke on it because when I did, I got a little bit of pushback from her. And that's the type of lifestyle she wanted to live. I couldn't blame my stepfather, although I kind of did. I had some resentments towards him because of the way that he allowed her to live. I felt like he should have done something about it, but that's another story. So I used to always tell her, you're going to end up burning your apartment down. You're going to end up nodding out, falling asleep, and killing yourself. I remember telling her that on numerous occasions. And although that's not the way her life ended, it was pretty close. Because what ended up happening, some of you know this, some of you might not, but I told you guys, my mom, she passed away prematurely. She didn't have to pass when she did. She was in her 50s and she could have had a lot of life left in her. However, she ended up having an accident. At least that's what I heard. There's some things about it that I kind of didn't like, but again, that's another story. But apparently what ended up happening to her is she nodded out like I knew she would, like she always did. And she didn't end up burning, my grandmother's house down is where it happened at, but she nodded out and apparently she leaned forward in the bed and suffocated in a pillow. She leaned into a pillow and she suffocated. And that's how she passed away. They found her, hours later and she was gone. There was nothing they could do. But, it's unfortunate. She lived an alternative type of lifestyle where the drugs and the things that she was doing to her body, it ravished her. You could see outwardly, you could see what the drugs had done to her. When you're using dope for years and years and that's all you do is you shoot dope and you live for your next fix. And it's not even about getting high no more. It's about becoming normal, just getting well. That's when you've taken it to another level. You know, I've talked about that before. For me, it wasn't about chasing any kind of rush. Those days were gone years ago. Whenever I would fall back into that addiction and I would get strung out again, for me, it was just about getting well, getting normal. It wasn't about, feeling that rush in my chest or anything like that, that warm, euphoric feeling that a lot of dope fiends chase that can still mainline. For me, it was just about waking up, trying to be normal. And I would find myself throughout the day looking at other people, looking at family members, looking at other people out in the streets and in admiration, admiring them like, damn, man, you don't know how lucky you are to just be able to wake up, get out of bed, wake up, brush your teeth, go on about your day, do whatever you do, go make a cup of coffee, go sit down in the backyard, do whatever you do, get up, grab the car keys, go somewhere. But you don't have to wake up and fix. You don't have to get normal. And it's sad, when, you're struggling and internally you're thinking about things like that, just wanting to be normal, and this is all self-inflicted. We're the ones that at some point we choose to go down to the dope spot or get in touch with somebody that has the bag and cross that line, knowing, I've known over the years, every time I've got out, I would always try to tell myself, man, stay clean, stay away from that spot, stay away from certain people. But there were triggers that I knew that if I went around certain people or if I did certain things, it was over. It was a wrap. I was going to end up getting around somebody and I would just get weak. And next thing you know, I'd be fixing. And next day, I do it again. And I might skip a day if I was lucky. Third day, I do it again. Fourth day, I skip a day if I was lucky. Fifth day, I do it again. Sixth day, boom, I'm hooked. And that's how it went for me years and years. But the thing I really wanted to talk about is these programs, these drug programs that some of you are familiar with. It's crazy that you guys are familiar with them, that, some of you had been through them, that some of you probably went through some of the same experiences that I went through. Those old programs that I mentioned that some of you are familiar with, Delancey Street, Our Family, the one in Napa, Walden House. There was another one out of Redwood City. I can't remember the name of it, but those programs, they're Synanon-based programs from back in the 70s. Now, for those of you that have been to Delancey Street, that program is on a different level. Let me talk about Walden House for a minute, though. No, let me talk about Our Family in Napa. So like I said, I don't think that program is it's operating anymore. It might be, I don't know. They might even have flipped it and changed the name. It was a big program and it had a lot of juice with the courts. The same way that, I described Walden House and Delancey Street, they had a lot of juice. They could come into the courts if, you got in touch with them, you reached out, they came up, they scheduled an interview and you talked the talk, you said everything that you needed to say in order for them to accept you. They would write an acceptance letter and then they would come into the courts and they would represent you. They would come in there and be like, hey, look, this guy right here is somebody that we can help. We've talked to him. He's a good fit for our program. He's ready to turn his life around. And Your Honor, he's not going to gain nothing. Nothing's going to benefit him from going to prison. And a lot of the times, like I said, they had a lot of juice with the courts and they would divert you to a program. So I remember going to Our Family in Napa. It was a co-ed program, and like Walden House, it had the juvenile facility that was a separate house, and it had the adult facility that had its own house. And it was a nice program. And again, if I would have been ready to commit, if I would have been ready, to really work on myself back in those days, if I really would have been receptive to the type of help that they were trying to give me, it was a good program. It was a good program. I have a lot of good memories from that program, even though every day I stayed there, I thought about splitting. I thought about how I was going to leave, or my mind was stuck in the streets. I have a lot of good memories that are still near and dear to me. I still hold on to those memories. You know, the thing that was crazy about our family is they had like the benches, they had a bench. They had benches in all the hallways. And that was like their sacred tool, the benches. And what it was is, if you were somebody like me back in those days, I was low riding, I was a bully, I was picking on the other kids there because like I said, even over there at that program, you had a lot of kids that came from the suburbs that their parents had a lot of money and maybe they caught little Johnny smoking some weed and maybe they found a couple pipes in his room, a couple weed pipes, and they would send him to a program like this, dish out 30, 40,000 to put him through rehab. These weren't hardcore drug addicts like myself. They weren't guys that were out there, in the mix, in the streets, really involved in in some shooting galleries and places like the Tenderloin, 16th and Mission, Skid Row, those type of places like that. These were just some little youngsters that just got caught up, and it was probably good though. It was probably good. They caught them smoking weed, and maybe they caught them at a time where it was before they, because they call weed a gateway drug. Maybe it was good before they started experimenting with other drugs. But those were the kind of guys that were there with me. So I used to pick on them. I was having sex with the female residents there. I was constantly getting in trouble. But the bench, like I said, it was a sacred tool. So if I threatened you or if we got into a confrontation, whatever it was, and you told me, hit the bench, we would both, from that point on, we were on quiet. We couldn't say nothing. We couldn't talk to nobody, couldn't acknowledge nobody, do nothing. You had to go to the bench, sit on the bench, and sit there and look straight ahead. Not move, not say nothing. Anybody walk by, you couldn't move, look at them. You just had to stare straight ahead. There was only certain people that could come by and tell you, get up off the bench. They were called FCC members, if I remember, family coordinating, whatever they were called. And, you'd stand up and they'd be like, why are you on the bench? No, because Mikey, or back then they called me by my real name. John, he threatened me, and, I was in the kitchen. I was just trying to clean up my area, and he came in there, and next thing you know, he's threatening me, and he took my dish towel and he threw it, and whatever it was. So I would get up, they'd tell me, get up, what's your story? And I'd say whatever I had to say, and then they'd be like, okay, hey, stay away from each other. Whatever they would say, they try to resolve it right there, but they put you on a hit list. They write that down. They pen that for the later on in the week, which I'm going to get to in a minute. So, but the bench was the sacred tool. I don't know what the right word is that I'm trying to think of, but the bench was like the regulator. It was like, that was the tool that kind of stopped everything. They used that to basically resolve everything. So, that was one of their tools. Obviously, they had a lot of rehab. They had a lot of counseling, things like that, one-on-ones, group counseling. And again, it was Synanon based. So when I say Synanon based, these are the programs from like the 70s that are really into attack therapy, that really want to just break you down. They want to break down all your old habits, everything about you, the way you walk, talk, speak, the way you think, all those patterns. They break them down and replace them with, positive ways of thinking, positive ways of acting. So the other thing that they had was, it was a tool that they called the game. Now, the game, what it was is, if you were somebody, again, like myself, that came into the program and you had an image. Back then, I was low riding. I thought I was a little homeboy, and I had my little stilo about me. And it was obvious just by outwardly looking at me. So they would see that off top when you come in, and when they run that game, it's called the game. What it is so once a week or twice a week, however many times that they used to do it, they go into this big multi-purpose room and they'd make a big circle with all the chairs, and everybody would go in there, and then there'll be two counselors that would attend that, whatever you want to call it, activity or group. And they'd always started out like this. The two counselors would start talking to each other, and they'd be like, "Hey, Jake," they'd be like, "So this week we're gonna talk to a couple family members that, there's one in particular that he's having sex with females, the female, the female residents. He's threatening people. He's not taking the program serious. I mean, he's doing all kind of fucked up shit." And then they just turn and they'd be like, "So, John, what's going on with you, motherfucker?" And they'd be like, "You're on the fucking hot seat." And as soon as they say that you're on the hot seat, the whole circle would just come to the edge of their seats and would just be, "You fucking punk ass motherfucker, you ain't shit. You know what I mean? Why are you even here? You're dead weight, motherfucker. Why don't you just get the fuck on?" Imagine 40 people yelling at you at the top of your lungs. It was, to me, the first time that they did that shit. I wasn't used to people getting at me like that. It's, for a lot of those guys, it's a game. That's why they call it the game. It's a game. It's fun to them. They're playing around. But coming from the streets, coming from my neighborhood, coming up the way that I did, I wasn't used to somebody talking to me like that. So the first time they did, right away I leaned back in my seat and I crossed my arms and I'm like, "Man, fuck all you motherfuckers, man. Fuck you." You know what I mean? And I'd sit there and I'd bite into it. And at some point, there was one youngster that said a little bit too much. And I popped up out my seat and was getting ready to blitz that fool. And, they jumped up, got in the middle of me, and I split. I walked out. They weren't gonna let me bomb on this dude. I'm like, "I'm gone, man. I'm up out of here. Fuck this place." So I went, was starting to pack my stuff, and the counselors came in there and they were like, "Man, look, this is part of the therapy, and we're just trying to help you, man. You guys ain't helping me by having everybody call me out my name, disrespecting me. I'm not used to that. And that fool running his mouth, what he said, that's not cool. That's not gonna help me." So it took me a while to be able to adjust to that. And, to the point to where I was able to just like, "Man, it's all good. Say whatever you guys want to say." Even though I was taking notes and remembering like shit that people were saying so I could confront them later. But that was the wrong mentality to have, because again, it was a game. It was a way for people to confront you about your shit that wouldn't necessarily confront you because they were scared of you or because they just didn't have the balls to say it. But this was a chance for them to get all that out there, to say whatever they wanted to say, and you couldn't do shit or say shit about it. But, once they tear you down, because they do the women the same way. They do a lot of the females the same way. A lot of women came in with, they came off the streets. They were selling their bodies for money or for drugs in order to get well. And a lot of them didn't take care of their kids. So they would go in on them about this stuff. "You fuck, you know what I mean? You ain't no mother. You're a piece of shit. You abandon your kids." And so they break them down too. But the whole purpose, again, is not only to let people express how they feel about you and to really let you know how people see you. I guess that's supposed to, help you identify with the way people see you so that you can change or whatever. The other thing is they want to break you down, and then at the end they want to try to build you up. So that, like the females, when they get on them about their kids and about selling their bodies, then they change, they change the tempo or the tone, and then they start talking to them. "How come you left your kids? We know that you probably didn't intentionally mean to do it, but you got to think about it. Your kids, you're the best, their best protector. So if nobody else is gonna, so you know what I mean? They try to build them back up. But that was one that was, I said that they called this the game. I'm wrong. They called this the I forget what they call it, the group or something, hot seat or something like that. So the game, the other one that I'm getting it confused with is, this is the one where, again, if you come in there and you got a little stilo about yourself, some swag, and you got a little bit too much of the streets in you. So what they'll do is FCC, like the family members, the ones that run it, and they're also residents, they're also people that are in the program for their addiction. They will give you either a minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, so depending on how much you're riding or how much you got this image. And if they give you 2 minutes, say they give me 2 minutes, John, you got 2 minutes, a slip game for 2 minutes. So again, what this is the group will come in, they'll sit in a big circle. There'll be about 50 people, females, males, everybody. They'll have a couple counselors come in there. There's a can that they put in the middle of the group on the floor. And inside the can, they have little small pieces of paper that are folded up. And each one of those pieces of paper represent some kind of, it could be something like jump up and down and act like Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde drinking a potion, drinking one of their potions, and just your arms and legs flailing and yelling. You gotta, somebody in there is gonna have a watch, a stopwatch. You gotta tell them, timekeeper, give me time. And they'll tell you, time, go. For 2 minutes. And there ain't no bullshit, and there ain't no lollygagging. For 2 minutes, you gotta go strong and jump up and down like an idiot with your arms and legs flailing and acting like you're on some kind of secret potion. Or it could be act like a chicken laying a 500-pound egg. So you got to get out there for 2 minutes and make a fool out of yourself. They had some crazy ones. They had some crazy ones, man. And again, at first, I was pushing back against everything that they were trying to, all these kind of things, these games and these groups. It's like, there ain't no way. I'm not doing no shit like that. You're crazy. I was too cool to do it back in those days, straight up. That's what it was. I was too stuck in my ways. Like, you're not going to make a fool out of me. I'm not doing that shit. All right, go sit your ass on the bench then. Cool. But eventually, your boy, man, had to get with the program. And, it came from counselors talking to me outside the groups. Come on, man, you got to participate. You got to participate. It's all part of you might not agree with it, but these things that we do, these tools, these groups, they work to an extent. Whether you can see it or not, they work, and it's worked for other people. So I had to act like a chicken laying a 500-pound egg. Nah, you ain't gonna get me to give you an example of what I did. Hell nah. But that was one thing. Now that might seem like an extreme program. And up until the point where I went to Walden House, it actually was, because a lot of the other ones were our family in Napa. It was, that one, they did the game, they did attack therapy, and Walden House kind of did the same thing. They had other groups that were similar. But those two programs right there and all the other ones that I had been to were kind of mild compared to Delancey Street. Delancey Street was on its own level. That program wasn't no joke. And I'm not sure if Delancey Street had a program, like a separate house for adolescents, juveniles. I'm not sure. They did have, yeah, they did. I'm pretty sure they did. I can't remember. Honestly, I want to say they did. I'm almost 90% positive that they did, because I don't remember going into that program. No, they didn't. I remember now. You guys got to understand, it's been so long since I've been to these programs. You're talking 30 something years ago. You know what I mean? So Walden House, let me just talk about Walden House for a minute. Walden House was another good program. But again, going through my addiction, going through that cycle, whatever you want to call it, going through those phases, I still wasn't ready. When I was younger and I went to our family and some of the other programs that I first went to, obviously I wasn't ready at that point. And again, I used them just to get out when I was in jail or when I was in juvenile hall, just to get back out to the streets. And then I'd cut tread. I'd get up out of there. Walden House was the same thing. It was the same way. I told you guys how, I got into Walden House. I told them everything that they needed, everything I knew they wanted to hear. I got accepted, and I actually stayed there for 6 months. Surprisingly, I actually stayed there 6 months. It wasn't a bad program. They had money. The juvenile program was kind of cool. Aside from all the stuff that I didn't like just about being in rehab, it was co-ed, they had females there, and just the kids program, they did a lot of good things. They went out on outings like what happened with the Ocean Beach incident and Great America and all kind of places like that. So it was all right. Eventually, I ended up getting kicked out of that program for trying to stab the teacher. That's another story. Basically, I was acting like an idiot, and they had a substitute teacher that wasn't the regular teacher, and this fool was trying to flex his little muscles, and next thing you know, I'm trying to stab this cat with a pencil. And 20 minutes later, I'm getting handcuffed by SFPD, and I'm basically being told, John Mendoza, you are being terminated from Walden House. Everything we've tried to do to rehabilitate you has failed. You are not receptive. So that was it with Walden House. I want to say Walden House was the last program I had been to as an adolescent before I turned 18. Right after I ended up splitting from Walden House, I turned 18. And before I would end up getting caught up for a couple of robberies, I used Delancey Street as a means to get back out to the streets again. I had, they diverted me again, tried to give me action and go into a drug program because I still had issues. I was still struggling with my addiction. So they sent me to Delancey Street. Now, Delancey Street, for those of you that have been there, you guys know what I'm talking about. As soon as you get to this program, you know that it's a different kind of program. These guys don't play. You come in, they give you a tour of the house, and then they get straight cracking to business. If you got mustache, goatee, whatever, it's coming off. Your head, whatever kind of hair. If you got long hair, ponytail, and you one of them guys that think, that loves your hair, it's coming off. Females too. Everybody gets bald. They walk around with clippers, and they'll give you a haircut on the spot. It's actually a disciplinary tool that they use as well. For females too, if they've earned the privilege of growing out their hair and they end up catching some kind of misconduct for something, they'll whip out some clippers and cut their hair right there. They'll go back to being bald. That's a cold program. In that program, again, there's no juvenile, so they do all kind of crazy stuff as far as disciplinary and the tools, the things that they. So over there, they do a lot of attack therapy. Delancey Street is a huge program, and again, you got a lot of politicians like Dianne Feinstein is tied in with Walden House. There's other politicians that are tied in with Delancey Street. It's a multi-million-dollar program. It has its own moving company. There's whole blocks out there that Delancey Street owns. Restaurants, moving companies. They got all kind of businesses that are owned by that program. So just to give you guys an idea of what happened when I went to Delancey Street, and I'm going to wrap this up with just some closing thoughts. But when I got there, gave me a haircut, shaved my well, I was already bald, but shaved my mustache, my goatee, what I had at that time because I was young, and then they tricked me. I was already like, I'm out of here, man. There's no way I'm staying here. Just the whole atmosphere, it just seemed like this is too much. This is too much. They're too involved. This is way different than anywhere I've ever been. So I'm already like, I'm gone. First chance I get, I'm up out of here, man. So they ended up tricking me. They told me that they were gonna, hook me up with some good threads. They were gonna give me some clothes, and a lot of them were gonna be new and not to trip, because I didn't really bring nothing with me from the jail. All I brought was what I had. So they take me downstairs to their warehouse. They had a warehouse at that place. It's huge. I go down there, and all the stuff that they had me select from was literally clothes from the 70s. There wasn't nothing in there that I would have wore. Everything that they had was garbage. I'm talking about Flower Child, Peace, Hair, and Happiness back in the 70s. That's the kind of clothes they had. Nothing but hard shoes with buckles on them, like dress shoes, church shoes. The jeans were the kind of hip huggers that you could only put like 4 fingers in the front pockets. Those are the kind that they make you wear. Bell bottoms. The shirts were like them old 70s style shirts, buttoned down with just crazy stuff, 70s stuff, man. Trust me. When I looked at the stuff that I had to select from, I was like, hey, you know what? Just whatever, throw it in the bag. Yeah, that's cool. You want this? Yeah, that's cool too. Because I knew I was leaving. Anyway, I got there at around, I want to say I got there in the afternoon sometime, around 11, 12 in the afternoon. And by 3 o'clock, I was gone. That's how fast I got up out of Delancey Street. I never even gave that program a chance. As soon as I got, to a spot where, there was an open door, I remember some guy coming up talking to me, and he was like, hey, you're a new resident here. And he was like, you're going to like this program. And, we started walking, and we're walking towards an open door. And as we're walking and we're talking, he stops, and I keep walking. And I'm like, hey, I'm gone, man. And I ended up just splitting. But that program, Delancey Street, before I left, they had me, when you're brand new, they have you serving. You serve dinner, breakfast, lunch. They have like a 5-star cafeteria. They got a huge It's like they run it like a righteous restaurant. And they train you the first day you're there. So they give you a section of tables that you're supposed to serve, and you got to put a towel over your arm like a righteous server, man. You got to come. May I take your order, please? And there's only like specials or regulars. There's different types of plates that they have on the menu, and they try to fluster you. You'll go up to a table and you'll see some homegirls, and they'll know you're a homie, and you'll go over there and be like, "May I take your order?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, give me a regular." She wants a special, and give her a regular and give her a special. Now, you know what? Give me a regular and give her a special. Now, add this on there. So they're trying to mess with you, and they know that you're struggling. Everybody's been through it, and they can see, you got these crazy clothes on. Yeah, boy had on some bell bottoms, straight up hip hugger bell bottoms with a crazy shirt. They made me wear a tie. I didn't even know how to tie a tie. I had to have somebody else tie it for me. At that point, I had never wore a tie in my life. So I don't know how to tie this shit. No mustache, feeling like just like a straight lame. So anyway, I had enough of that. The serving stuff, I think that's kind of what pushed me over the top. Like, I'm not even going to stay here a day longer. I'm not even catching breakfast. I'm gone, man. So I ended up splitting from that program. I just wanted to talk a little bit about these programs. That was the whole point of putting this video out, just to chop it up with you guys a little bit. Those of you that have been to these specific programs, we got a little bit of a mutual we got something in common for those that have been there. Those experiences, even though I wasn't receptive to rehab back in those, those years, those days when I was young, there's still some memories that are still, they're still good memories to me, if it makes sense to you guys. Even though I wasn't committed and I didn't want to get help, just being in those programs around righteous people that were really trying to help people. Some of the counselors, they're just straight up people. They're people that have fought and beat their addiction, at least at that point. Because once you become an addict, you're going to be an addict for the rest of your life. It's going to be something that you're going to struggle with forever. You'll never be able to say, you know, I beat it and I don't have to worry about it. It'll never happen again. If you tell yourself that, you're lying to yourself, because, you know, being an addict, there's triggers, there's things that might push you there. You know, all the planets and everything might line up, and it's just, you're around the wrong people and the wrong circumstance. And next thing you know, you're making a bad decision, even though you know it's the wrong decision. And even though that you know that if I do this, if I fix, I'm going to spiral. I'm going to end up getting strung out. I'm going to end up, you know, losing relationships. My kids are going to be disappointed. It caused a domino effect. You know, the last thing I want to say is this, man. You know, some of you guys hit the nail on the head in the comments when you said that you can't force anybody to go to rehab. You can't force rehab down anybody's throat. The only time that those programs are going to work is when you're receptive, when you're ready to do it. A lot of us, you know, we get into that mindset of telling ourselves, when I'm ready to do it, I can do it. I'll do it. I'll get a couple bottles of methadone. I'll get some whatever kind of pills that I need to get in order to make it a comfortable, bearable experience. I'll do it because I got this. I can do it. I'm strong enough to beat it. Don't kid yourself. It's bigger than any one of us. You know, I had a gorilla. I had a whole pack of gorillas on my back. It wasn't no monkey. When I went on my runs, that's just the type of personality that I have. Anything that I do, I maximize it. I take it to the extremes, no matter if it's something positive or something negative. This, you know, obviously is negative. My addiction, I took it to the extreme. I wasn't doing what a normal addict would do. I wasn't doing 20 cc's, a gram a day. Like I told you guys, every time I ended up getting strung out, I had a dealer's habit where I had access to money where I could buy as much of it as I wanted. You know, I would, like I said, take it to the extremes, do as much as I could, almost to the point to where it almost killed me, but it didn't. I don't know anybody else that was ever doing 5 outfits full of black tar heroin. I mean, this stuff was black. You couldn't see through it. It would just be thick, black. You couldn't see through it. I see other people when they're doing it, they're fixing up a little $20 bag. You know, you can see it. It looks like it's looks like tea. You can see right through it. I was doing some other crazy stuff, man. I was taking it to a level to where people wouldn't believe it if I told them how much I was doing. Like I said, doctors in the past didn't even believe me when I told them how much I was doing. But anyways, for those of you guys that are out there right now that are fighting addiction, those of you that are going through it right now, you know, we only know when we're ready to really make that change. You know, and you guys obviously know that if you're stuck in addiction right now, and you got kids, you got a wife or a husband, you got responsibilities, you know that it's hard to manage all that stuff. It's hard to, you know, maintain positive relationships. It's hard to maintain positive relationships with your kids, with your spouse. You know, when you put them through a lot. That addiction, it's almost like in some senses, they're addicted as well. because you subject them to certain things that, I mean, they don't have no choice. You know, I said it in one of my recent videos where it's like you become trapped, literally trapped in your addiction. In order to go on vacation or something, you're going to stay gone for like 4 days. You got to have 4 days worth of dope to take with you. You know, in order to travel far somewhere, you can't just get in the car and go. You have to think about your addiction comes first. I need to make sure I got enough dope to make, you know, to keep me well throughout however long we're going to be gone. If you don't have enough dope to stay that long, then you're coming back because you can't stay out there. So it puts a lot of limitations on you. And as far as like your spouse, if you got a spouse, especially if he or she isn't, if they're not in that lifestyle, they're not strung out, they're not addicts as well, it's super unfair to them. The things that we put them through. I've destroyed some of my past relationships because of the things that I did. You know, they're only going to stick around for so long. They're only going to tolerate it for so long. And we become compulsive liars. How many times have you told them, how many times have you told your spouse, you know, this is the last time I'm the cop. I'm going to kick this week. I'm going to do it. Or I'm going to go get on the methadone program. Or I'm going to put myself in rehab. And that turns into, well, not only liars, we become compulsive procrastinators. You know, you tell them, I'm gonna go to the program for sure in 2 weeks. Probably even wrote it on the calendar. 2 weeks comes and you know what, something else comes up and you find a way to manipulate. You know what, we'll do it in 2 more weeks because of this, because of that. And another excuse comes up and you just keep on doing that and you keep on doing that. And eventually, you know, if you're with somebody that a ride or die, you're in that type of relationship, they're gonna stick with you. But it's unfair to do that to them. Somebody loves you, they love you. They're going to walk beside you. They're going to tolerate that. Then again, there's some people that, you know, everybody has a limit. They'll get to a point where they're like, you know what? Obviously, this is who you want to be married to. Obviously, you don't love me because you're not making no changes. We haven't been intimate. You don't do the things that you used to do for me when we first got together. You know, those are the things that you don't see, but trust me, they see them and they feel it. Anyways, I know I was probably just rambling on about different things. There's really no direction to this video. I just wanted to touch base with some of you that were in the comments, talk about some of my experiences in these programs, especially those ones that were Synanon based, those real hardcore programs. And again, I'll say it again, those programs are good. They will help somebody. They'll get you all set up, but only if you really want to do it. You know, if it's that time, if you've hit a bottom, you've hit that bottom and you're really ready to change because you know you're going to lose your kids, you're going to lose your wife, or you're tired of living like that. You're tired of doing yourself like that. And you think about putting yourself through detox. Most of these programs, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of them are good programs and they'll help you. They've done it before. That's what they do. You know, there's some of them like Delancey Street that when you graduate, you're going to graduate with a bank account, with a car, with a full-time job, and they set you up in an apartment. So you got everything that you need when you transition back out and you're out there on your own. Anyways, again, I know I rambled on. I hope some of you watch this. You know, if anything, this just creates some dialogue or just it creates some thoughts in some of your guys' minds. Being an addict, I know how it is. Sometimes we need to hear things. Sometimes we need to talk about things to generate thoughts in your own mind. It might be the thought that ignites, you know, you to actually go and do something, to maybe go get on methadone or go put yourself through a program or tell your significant other, you know what, after listening to this video or after thinking about, this, or after talking to somebody, I realized, what I've been doing, and I'm really gonna go get help. Get help, man. This is bigger than us. It really is. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll put out some other videos like this from time to time, and just give you guys my thoughts on some of the things that I've been through. My thing is to try to help people. If I can do it by talking about some of my experiences and, just casting a little bit of enlightenment on some things, then I'm all for it. Anyways, this was just a quick one. With that being said, again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This your boy B, and I'm out.